Hi guys, welcome to this Tubonge One-on-One. It's me Mhesh Mutwiri as always. And in this show we discuss objectively issues that pertains our economy, our politics, geopolitics, in a way that affects us on a day-to-day basis. Now, currently, at this moment, we just received the gazetted Finance Bill 2024. And I know most of us are asking what is the implication. Last year we had a lot of hullabaloos from the Finance Bill 2023. It has implications because it proposes tax measures that the government wants to undertake to raise the needed revenue to grow our economy to the next level and deliver the much needed services, goods and services to our people. And I think I take this conversation very as a very prominent conversation, especially at this time. It's very important, and I know most of you listening are very eager to see what is proposed, and maybe are we dealing with issues of overtaxation still, and again that question of debt, because we keep asking, is our debt sustainable? And I think I will keep this. I intend to have this discussion as objective as possible, but still as candid as possible, because debt is important. People, not really, I'm saying about revenue is important. Taxation is an imperative for any government, and we cannot talk about government if there are no taxes. So as I begin this conversation, I cannot be against taxation or taxation. Because that's one physical tool the government uses to raise capital. But let's analyze, because as citizens and as experts, we are very keen to see what is government proposing and whether it has implications really as envisaged to grow our economy. And I'll go fast forward. Let's start with the question of public debt. How does it come? And I just want to bring this, relate this to our, at a personal or a private level, because you have a list of things you want to do, maybe individually. Maybe you don't have enough income capacity to raise that. Whether it's a business, subsistence, sometimes you're forced to borrow. And in case of public debt, the very basic definition, as we said, is government mobilizing funds to raise so they can meet expenditures to drive development, because we need roads, we need education, we need healthcare, we need all these things. And government has one way to raise capital, or not really capital, to raise revenue, and that is taxation. So the taxes we pay, each one of us, contributes to funding government. But this is not usually enough. And especially being in a continent which has a lot of infrastructural needs, the needs to drive this economy is much higher, because we need more people. We have a very high youthful population that needs education, healthcare, and all these things. Government needs significant funds to be able to meet these needs. So typically our economies have not diversified enough to be able to raise much revenue to meet government, to bridge the budget needs. And that's why we have been forced to borrow. And looking at our borrowing has been on a trajectory. In 1999, we had only a public debt of around 500,000 Kenya shillings. At this moment, we have talking about a debt that is about 11 trillion, 11.14 trillion. And this, by last year, we had grown this debt. Within the 1 year of the Kenya Kwanza government, we grown that debt with 1.93 trillion Kenya shillings. And with this finance bill and the proposals being raised, and the tax revenue we are able to raise, we still see there will be budget deficits to raise the next budget, even though those estimates have not been brought, and we are most likely to find another increase on the public debt. But now let's talk about taxation. And are we overtaxed? Well, we're saying we're raising taxes so that we can meet public expenditure. And we had just been talking about public debt. Is our Kenyan public debt sustainable? That is the question. Is it sustainable? And that's something that we can have different perspectives. But we only look at one metric on the GDP to the debt to GDP ratio, which stands for Kenya at around 55% of debt to GDP. But we have seen other countries that have even higher, which are struggling with levels of high debt in Africa. We talk about Djibouti, which has about 70% ratio. We have Mozambique with around 72. We have Mauritius. We have Zimbabwe, and even Tunisia, which is a big economy. But looking at Tunisia, which has up to almost 94% of public debt to GDP ratio. All this shows us there's one common denominator. The reason why Africa is highly indebted is because of two things majorly. After the analysis that we have seen comparing different economies and their debt levels, and these two, I'm about to say, end up leading to a vicious cycle, returning these countries to the same level of indebtedness. For example, very low infrastructural development. So African countries are putting now a lot of significant investment in infrastructure. Even come to Kenya, the reason our debt is growing is because we want to build roads, ports, airports, railway systems, and yet we still have to provide for education, provide for healthcare. We have to continue running social protection investments, but we cannot. To accelerate our growth, infrastructure is very important. Trying to push internet to rural areas and all these things has pushed our government to find that is not able to raise a lot of resources. Number two is we don't have diversified economies. We have seen economies that rely plainly on agriculture and very few other productive sectors of the economy. So now when we say that economy doesn't have diversified sectors, that means we are not able to correct. We don't have a very broad tax bracket. So we are taxing just very few people, maybe people in formal sectors of this economy. And that's where the question of taxation comes from, because we are still targeting on the same people, same sectors. So we are not able to raise enough, and still we are faced with the pressure to keep developing, putting a lot of infrastructure because it's really needed. And that is the question that has led to high debt levels across Africa, apart from cases other areas like in Tunisia, where political instabilities has caused, and even corruption, really, because when we collect these revenues, we borrow this money, and we don't use this money optimally for the reason that it was borrowed, it doesn't get value. We don't get value for public funds, and that's one challenge that is leading to an indebted continent. I want to bring fast forward, come here to Kenya, and now on this question on the subject of the Finance Bill 2024. I think the Finance Bill, like any other bill, the Finance Bill is aimed at proposing avenues where government plans to collect revenue for budgeting to where the government plans to collect, to source money to fund our budget. And I've analyzed maybe just a few, because this document was just released on 9th May, just 2 days ago. We are still looking at it as we await for public participation, as is envisioned in Article 118, subsection 1B, that all of us, me and you, are invited to contribute and give our views, because that's where it matters, so that we can influence, we can change, and to suggest changes in that finance bill. But here are just a few that I've captured. And the finance bill proposes 2.5% annually on tax on the value of motor vehicle by all of us. If you have a car, if this finance bill passes, you will pay 2.5% of the value of that car. And that's a minimum of 5,000 a year to a maximum of 100,000 a year. Okay, we want to see what does this mean? And well, it has a huge potential to raise the much needed revenue. But what is the implication to our economy? Those are things we will discuss on later. Suggested of 16% VAT on bread. That is approximately 10% on each bread you will take when this finance bill is passed. We're also talking about an increase in excess duty on charges, digital charges in transactions of mobile phones, M-Pesa, internet services. So you are likely to spend more when you call after this finance bill is passed. Bank charges will increase by 16%. But interestingly, they have reduced excise duty on beer, that is 4.2% alcohol content. So likely to reduce the excise duty on beers from 71 to around 47%. But okay, these and very many other suggestions there that we shall be looking at. As I just said, that this finance bill has just been released 3 days ago, and we're looking at it. It's important to look at, because the implication is to raise revenue, grow our economy, meet government expenditure needs, and so forth. But it's very important to look at how the implication it has to the productivity of this economy, because if these measures are going to make it difficult to grow our economy, and businesses are going to collapse on the account of higher taxation, this is a very serious issue. But and this is a point now where I put my opinion and even try to analyze what other economies have done, faced with challenges that I think are similar to what our Kenyan economy is facing. Because currently we are looking at a country where we're faced with inflation. Prices are rising each day. Commodity prices are going up. Young people don't have jobs. So we're dealing with interestingly inflation and underemployment. And this is a situation we call in economics stagflation. There's a time, I think that's around 1968, around there, 1965, 1978, with Reagan. When Reagan in the US took over, that economy was faced with the same circumstances. There was high inflation, employment was on a high, and this is the situation we are in this country. And there are three policy directions, or three things that Reagan did that are now popular as Reaganomics. And these are, number one, reduced taxation. Yes, reduced taxation. Because you can increase tax revenue even if taxes, you tax less. Number two is that you deregulate businesses. Usiweke vikwazo mingi kwa biashara. And number three, you check on government expenditure. You reduce government expenditures, because that is expectation. That's a general expert expectation at this point where our country is facing these challenges. Because when you increase taxes, this economy which is undiversified, where even the segments of economies that we have are not developed. What does that mean? Is that there will be cases of tax avoidance, even mostly tax evasion. So, and maybe even those who pay, their cost of production will go up on account of taxation. So our business environment will not be so good. So I think even as we prepare to make our contribution in public participation, I think we would urge our legislators to consider reducing our levels of tax, and so that let us see to incentivize, to create incentives on productive areas of our economies. We can start from somewhere, like tax on even exempt taxes on input in agriculture, equipment, and all those things, so that we can encourage mechanization in agriculture and so forth. Transport is key. So looking at a point where we could be reducing taxes on fuel and stuff like this, so that we can fuel our economy. So those are areas that if we reduce taxes, we will increase the bracket of taxation. Number three, which is very controversial, because in Kenya, if you are to do any business, there are very many government agencies that are waiting to give you licenses, to approve you. I think Reagan reduced regulations in businesses, so people could do businesses. We saw a lot of sprout in businesses, and when these new businesses come in, they come in and are included in the tax bracket. So we have seen incidences like in hospitality industry, so that you can operate legally. You seem to require almost 32 approvals, and practitioners in these sectors, investors in this sector, are struggling with a lot of government regulation, from levies, from a lot of inspections and stuff like that. If we are able to collapse this and improve the environment of doing business, it's going to significantly improve the environment of doing business. Finally, is government expenditure, especially in areas that are not productive, like a lot of travel. Unfortunately, we have seen, like last year we spent a lot. This financial year we spent a lot in renovating state houses and stuff like this, and even investment in motor vehicle, very expensive motor vehicle. I think this is a time to reduce government expenditure, and so expecting to see austerity measures in these areas. These are the measures we expect to see, and for now, as we review and acquaint ourselves with the Finance Act 2024, we want to see the spirit actually in that, not just the flesh, because if we concentrate only on the 25% annual tax on motor vehicle, we might be clouded and not look at the more other provisions or proposals in there We don't want to get lost in in this few, motor vehicle, VAT on bread, and these others. Let us see what is the spirit of this finance bill 2024, and is it able to bring incentives? Is it able to jumpstart this economy? Yeah, so I think today we just had to just mention a few of those and look at it generally, but in our next podcast we shall look at the depth and even have now a very clear suggestions, so that from this one-on-one show we can maybe even have a petition to the parliamentary to our members of parliament and legislators to improve and to have this finance act work to broaden a productive economy. Thank you very much. This has been Tubonge one-on-one with Mhesh, Mutwiri Mwirigi. It's always good opportunity to be with you, to connect with you, and as we analyze objectively status of our economy, political implications, and the geopolitics that affect me and you. Asante sana. Keep locked, subscribe, and continue watching us. We bring more such of these conversations, as well as mixing them with other discussions that interest you, but those that will grow our economy, will contribute to change our mindset, and let's keep moving. Asanteni sana.
Tubonge vile inafaa, sisi vijana si leaders wa kesho. Sasa hivi juu tuna uwezo, vile inafaa kukimiza mboka, kimiza ndoto, juu atakiwa msoto. Vile inafaa jenga mimi nani kujenge, pomni hiyo ndio wasitutenge. Vile inafaa